Hey everybody, this is Rusty here at FCP Euro, and today we're going to show you how to service your ZF 8 HP transmission in our B9 Audi S5. So the service kit we're going to be using today for our drain and fill includes the fill plug as well as the drain plug and all the fluid that you'll need to take care of your service. Optionally, we also offer the pan with an integrated filter and all the hardware you'd need to take care of that. The manufacturer's service interval on the drain and fill service for the transmission in this vehicle is about 4 years or 40,000 miles. There is actually no service interval for the lifetime filter that they claim. However, it is certainly serviceable. And again, we will have these service kits available. However, we will not be going over it in today's DIY. Now that we know what we're working with, let's get into some tools we'll need to take care of the job. As far as tools are concerned, we're not going to need too many, but there are some specific tools you will want to have on hand. Starting with the 8mm Allen drive for the drain plug. And then as you see here, I have a 10mm Allen drive, but it is a little bit shorter. You will want that for some clearance by the exhaust for that fill plug. To remove those, I do have a 3/8 ratchet, and then to tighten everything up, I do have a 3/8 torque wrench. For filling, we chose to use the CTA 7077. Last but not least, we do have the Autel MX 808. This is not absolutely necessary for this application, but some sort of a scan tool will be required for making sure that you have the fluid at the correct temperature, for setting that level, and making sure that the fluid is cool enough to start the service. That being said, let's get started and get this service done. All right, so before we get into the service, I do want to take a second here to just give you a little tidbit. Although you want the fluid warm to drain all of the contaminants out and make sure you get any debris out with the fluid, you also want to make sure that it's not too hot. What I mean by that is when you go to refill the fluid, you want to make sure it's below 30 degrees Celsius. So before we get started, we have warmed up the car and we just want to check the fluid temperature real quick before we drain anything, just to get an idea of how long we may want to drain it. Once it's up in the air, it may be difficult to get your sand tool in here and rehook up to check temperature. So we've got about 93 degrees Fahrenheit here, which is roughly about 35 degrees Celsius. It is a little bit warm if we were to go start the service again and check the fluid level. However, we are just going to drain it, and before we start the vehicle back up, we'll check and make sure we're below that 30 degrees Celsius. We are going to be setting the level at 40, so it will warm up that 10 degrees fairly quickly, which is why you want to make sure you're below that 30 to give yourself some time to get set up and have any additional fluid aside so that you can make sure the fluid level is correct at temperature. That being said, we're good to go. We're going to start draining the fluid now. So once you have the vehicle suspended in the air, we are going to crack the fill plug first. Definitely doesn't make sense to drain the drain plug if you can't get the fill plug out. So my rule of thumb is not only make sure you get the fill plug out first for breathing room so that you can get some of the fluid to drain faster, you want to make sure you get that fill plug out. So once you drain the transmission, you're able to fill it back up. Once we've got that cracked, come down to the drain. Once you have the drain plug out, you can go ahead and take your fill plug all the way out, let this drain, and get your fluid and fill and drain plugs ready to go back in. Now that we have our drain plug out and you can see that there's no longer fluid dripping, we can go ahead and install this and begin our fill process. It's just a small 90-degree turn once the drain plug is installed. I wouldn't suggest torquing this because it literally stops and you can no longer engage the drain plug any further. We're gonna go ahead and fill this up with the fluid, and once we do, it will begin to pour out a little bit. Once it starts to pour out a small bit, we're gonna go ahead and use our fill plug that we removed, put that back in there, start the vehicle up briefly, and then pull this back out and top it off before we set the fluid level entirely. All right, now that we've got a little coming out, we're gonna put the old fill plug back in. Make sure you clean it pretty good. You don't want to add any unwanted debris to your new transmission fluid. So again, we're just going to take this out of the way and get a lot more of that out. While it's still pouring out, we're going to put that back in. And we're just going to start the vehicle real quick. Let it run for a second. Rev it up slightly and get the torque converter to be refilled with some of the transmission fluid. And then we'll top it off once more to the point at which it is coming out of that fill plug again, and then we'll be ready to let the vehicle idle, get up to that 40-degree temperature, and set the fluid level. All right, so now that you got the vehicle almost all the way filled, we're just gonna start it up briefly to kind of get some of that fluid moving around the transmission so that we make sure that we have enough fluid in there before we get up to temperature. And again, this is why you want to have the vehicle at a slightly lower temperature than 30 degrees, because you'll have to start it multiple times, and it does tend to warm up that fluid fairly fast. So, start the car up in park, let it idle for a few minutes, shift it through the gears, into neutral and reverse, as well as drive just for a few moments. And then going back to park. We're going to take the traction control off and just brake boost it with holding one foot on the brake, putting the vehicle in drive, and then pulling the RPMs up to about 2,000. What this is doing is just filling the torque converter with any fluid that may have drained out during our drain. So now we can go ahead and make sure that we have enough fluid to start setting the fluid at temperature. So pick the vehicle back up, top off the fluid until it runs out again, and then we'll do this again. Same thing, fill until it comes out, and it's just starting to now. So again, with the original fill plug, we're gonna just put this back in. Now that we've got that back in, we'll go ahead and get the vehicle back down, get our scan tool hooked up, pull up transmission fluid temperature, get the vehicle back up to temperature, and right before the 40-degree mark, right around 35 degrees Celsius, we'll pull that fill plug back out, make sure that we don't have to top this off, and get us close to that 40-degree mark. And once it's there, you should have a somewhat steady drip or no drip at all, indicating that at the 40-degree mark, we are at our fluid level. So that being said, let's go ahead and get the car back down. Whether you're using the Autel MX808 or you're using a similar scan tool, all we want to gain access to is the one measured value for the transmission fluid temperature. All right, so ours is at about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, which is still below that 30-degree Celsius mark. So we're going to let the vehicle warm up. We're right around 30 degrees. We'll start picking the vehicle back up, take that fill plug back out, and monitor the level. If some comes out at that point, that's totally fine. If nothing comes out, we're going to put a little bit of fluid in there just to top that off a hair. So as we get up to the 35 to 40 degree mark, it flushes off a little bit of the excess fluid. And then hopefully by the 40-degree mark, we are ready to put that fill plug back in, and we're pretty much all set. That being said, we're going to let the vehicle warm up, and we'll catch you guys in a second. We're right at about 96 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly about 35 degrees Celsius. Now we're going to take this fill plug out right before we get to the 40-degree mark, which is roughly about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see nothing's coming out, so we don't have too much fluid in there. But being at 96.8, we're going to just put in a tiny bit to make sure that we have just enough when we're at temperature. We're just going to top off a little bit to get it to come out, and it's starting to drip out now, so we're going to let that flush out a little extra. A little side note, if you're having trouble with the temperature, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put some of the fluid in a refrigerator or a freezer. That way when you're putting fluid in, it's constantly cooling it down at the same time. Sometimes doing this service, you may exceed the temperature before you're actually at level, so something to keep in mind. We're already at 98.6 degrees, so very close to setting fluid level. I'm gonna go ahead and get our new fill plug, get that ready while this is tapering off. All right, we're right at about 100. You can see how quickly this does speed up. Almost 101. We're starting to taper off in the fluid. This is going to come down to like a steady drip, and then you'll be okay to put the fill plug back in. All right, we're right at 104. We're going to let this drip off just a tiny bit more. Try to get everything we can without getting too far out of temperature. We're still at 104. We're still at 104. And honestly, if you're at this point at 104 degrees, quite honestly, you could put the drain plug in. If there was a steady stream coming out like it did once I topped off the fluid, it is not a good time to put the fill plug back in. We're at 105. This is still a small drip, but this is more than acceptable. I'm gonna go ahead and put this plug back in. So the new 10mm drain plug is tightened to 30 Newton meters. You don't want to over tighten it. It is an aluminum plug. Now we can go ahead and clean that area off. If the fluid was still flowing out at this point and you were at too high of a level, you would more than likely have to let the vehicle sit for a few hours before adjusting the level. You may even want to let the vehicle sit overnight, because as you saw, this vehicle does warm up that transmission fluid fairly quickly. So just keep that in mind, monitor that fluid, and you can see why you would actually need a scan tool to perform this service, because that fluid warms up so quick. There is some instances when people will use a temperature gun, but you're only getting the outside of this plastic pan. You're not actually getting the fluid temperature. So it is good to keep in mind the possible use of a scan tool if you're thinking about performing this service. And that pretty much wraps up the service on our ZF 8HP and our B9 Audi S5. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if so, hit that like button down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them in the comment section as well. And we'll have plenty more videos on this vehicle and many others like it, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.